I should get the notification there. Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Hilsmeyer. If we haven't met, Digital Program Manager. I will share out the slide deck if you want to participate in that way. Yep, I guess it is Valentine's Day. Probably not a lot of romance going on in this meeting here, but we'll talk about, if you want to, we can, I suppose. Here is our agenda today. Again, for folks who have no low or limited vision or just have their screen on or listening audio only, I'm a male, Adam, sitting in my home office. I have one of the Zoom backgrounds on behind me, so you can't see anything other than a field of lavender, which is very tall compared to what I'm sitting in. Little bit of housekeeping before we get going here. Auto captions are available. Just note, auto captions are not the same as equitable access. They don't replace the need for real-time translations, but you can turn them on in your Zoom screen menu. At any point, if you experience an accessibility barrier, please do reach out to myself. It's also a good time to note, again, if you didn't see it, that the report and accessibility barrier link is now in the footer of most of just about everybody's websites, sans faculty websites at the moment right now. But that is something we're looking at adding on there. We are currently recording this event, and we'll share back the link and the resources that we cover as well. I'm going to share the ground rules in chat, as well as the land acknowledgement of the land that we're on, so we can think about ways we can make a personal and institutional commitment to a shared future together. And those are in chat. All right. I'm going to bring a guest right in the top. I'm going to bump up an item because Jim Phillips, who is the Digital Access and Equity Program Lead, has something big happening this month on campus where you can actually help us make a more accessible UC Santa Cruz. And with that, I will welcome Jim Phillips.
Thanks. Thanks for the great intro. First, I'll share my screen here. How's that? Everybody can see that, I hope. And I'll put a link in the chat too in a second, but we do have a digital accessibility strategic planning initiative underway. So we'll be writing a big plan in the spring and summer, and that will be available for vetting later on. But as part of that, as a preparation for that, we've engaged a company called Access for All to come on campus, and they're going to help us determine our current state and the things that we can do to improve. I'm sure you've been part of these kinds of efforts in the past. So they're going to conduct some listening sessions that are happening Monday, February 26th, the 27th and 28th there. And we've kind of broken them into themes. There's, students and individuals with disabilities. There is one theme. Another one is learning and teaching. That's mainly for faculty. In support of digital accessibility would be, I assume you all mostly. And if you didn't or couldn't make one of these sessions, it's okay to attend a different one, so you could sit in on one with students if you have to. And there's even a couple makeup sessions. So encouraging people to go out there and register. Have people already registered? Has anyone done that? Let me see.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
How many should we register for? I registered for most of them.
I'm thrilled with just if you can attend one. It's just, you would have an opportunity to speak directly with Access for All and, share your personal experiences or ask them questions. It's all going to really help us form the basis of this strategic plan in the future. So the more input, the better. And one thing I would draw your attention to, that's awesome that you're going to do more than one. But one thing I'll draw your attention to here is that we have an online survey now. So there's an asynchronous option. If you're in a situation where you just can't attend to any, there's a short, about 8-question online survey that should take about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on your answers. So if you could really help get the word out to different, your colleagues and different groups you might be part of, that would really help us bolster the registration for the in-person and Zoom-based ones, but also the online survey.
Question came up in chat. Quick question: does listening session mean training as well?
No, it'd just be an opportunity to, they'll have their set of questions that they ask, about, do you have adequate resources, or what are you currently doing with regard to supporting individuals with disabilities? And you can describe some of that. So it'll be what I believe to be a pretty informal conversation. I don't think we're going to really record it. We might save the transcript just to help us with note taking. So, there's a certain freedom there where you can speak freely and talk about whatever you'd like to discuss.
Great. Okay, I think that does the questions. I'm going to take sharing back, Jim.
Sure.
And I would note that there's reasons why we're putting this together. And I think, gathering information, and this is pulled right off that same website that Jim just posted. There's reasons why we want to make UCSC more accessible. And this is one of the first steps in doing that, is gaining feedback from folks on it. When it comes to training, there's a couple places that you can go to those spaces right now. We've actually got required training. Hopefully that's not a new idea. If you're going to create a new website in the UCSC environment, there is a required training component that talks about the accessibility roles and responsibilities and what you can do. We also have some components on the ITS website about how to make websites more accessible. We'll actually even talk a little bit more in depth about these today. Any other thoughts or questions, Jim?
No, just thanks for your time today. And, thank you, Adam, for pushing forward the training on web accessibility. There's that third bullet point where we've never actually done a strategic plan. To be honest, I don't think we've ever done an official audit of our web pages either. So we've had, if you've been here a long time, you may remember brand identity efforts, or we've paid, companies to come in and give us advice on our websites, but we've always stopped short of checking things for accessibility. So anything you're doing right now with Siteimprove or the testing that you may do, thank you so much. It's really, we're just trying to formalize this and, through the strategic planning process. And so I appreciate all your input.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate your time today.
Bye-bye.
All right. Hey, look at that. Let's do an exercise when we're talking about accessibility. Plain language is a component of accessibility, and I thought we could do a little practice work right here. There are a ton of great resources out there, including sources like plainlanguage.gov. There's also a plain language network out there. We have some guidance in the communications, the UCSC communications style guide about plain language. And it's a topic that I'd like to talk about every now and then, because, a lot of us are writers or are creating content for the web. And I think this is helpful. When I would describe plain language, and this is also the plainlanguage.gov description, it's really communicating. So the very first time that people look at your information, they can consume it. It means they can get things, they can find what they need, they can understand what you're talking about. And the goal of putting content on the websites, on our website, should be so people find and use that information. And we'll get into an exercise here. When we talk about what web writing is, what does it mean to write for the web? In very general terms, there's research that's helped us understand what this means. Web writing should be easy to scan, quick. Minimal text is a good component. User-friendly, meaning that, like, when people find your information, they might not be in a very good place, because you could think of situations where the discovery of information that you might provide on your websites is important. Deadlines, safety information, health information, where something is happening so they can access that information. They might, be coming to your information and we just don't know where they're coming from, which means we need to make it easy to use. And I'd also note that web content is interactive. And why do I say these things? Because writing for the web is different from writing for print. When we print things in a linear fashion, we're delivering it one way. When we write for the web, we're a two-way communication channel, because people can interact and choose how they consume the information. So the question is like, okay, I get that. How do we actually write for the web? well, let's do an exercise here, and I'll share a Google Doc in our chat. Make sure I'm getting it to everyone here. Thank you, Sandra, for sharing the communication style guide. That's going to be one of the resources that we'll share out too. But if you wouldn't mind hopping into a Google Doc, let's try some techniques in plain language. And I'm zooming right into like some techniques here, but I think that's okay. One of the easiest ways, we have two exercises we'll quickly do here, is to change words that refer to organizational structures or the user to just you and we. And what I'd like you to do is take this paragraph right here and use these instructions. Replace the words that refer to a division or the user with pronouns. You don't have to fully edit anything. I'd say just like tweak that and go ahead and place answers in the space below. Feel free to use the Google Doc to work in if you want, or work in on your own space. And let's do that. I'll give everyone a little time to go ahead and process that. Word editing on the fly. Looks like a lot of folks are, you could identify those components there as you're working through it. Great. So we have some examples here, and a lot of that looks like good edits to this. It looks like we edited the primary copy. I'll drop the original source in here. Here's what plainlanguage.gov would suggest. And it's pretty darn close to what everyone was putting together. So let's head down to the next exercise. Lots of good versions. I think most folks picked it up well. I think in this one, they're suggesting like, sorry, the original copy. Yeah, the example was edited as we go here too. I think the division, we could do, and sorry if I'm picking apart yours, we need to. Something like that. Creates a shorter sentence, a little easier, breezier to read. Great notes here. Thoughts on that one? If not, we'll just move on to the second example here, which is just, number 3 now. We can edit up. Shortening sentences, short and brief. This kind of ties into ideas of plain language. This one, really the X is just, you don't have to rewrite this thing. Just like break this into this, run-on sentence into 2 different sentences or more, based on what you think. This could break down to. This is a pretty jargonish sentence, I'll say for sure. Don't feel like you need to edit it in any way, but I would just try to can we break that into 2 different spaces? And I would note that there's, there's lots of different takes on this about how you could do this. And as you're doing that, I'll get together some resources for us as well that I will share right now, but we'll also share in an email following. Yeah, like the ideas of even breaking it into like heading structures or, potentially using a list to make that cut through easier. Here's what plain language is suggesting. Oops, those are the sources. Let me put actually the answer here. Really what they did is just broke this component. They put a period after computer. Because that is the point where this seems to span into. And while it doesn't necessarily improve the copy, and I even see some like examples of better improvements of copy here, it does break this into a couple more succinct statements. And and maybe that equals a little more plain language. But I would say that these are two components that you'll find even in some of the resources: shortening sentences, looking for spaces to change pronouns instead of getting a little more technical in like the language that we use. There's a couple guides that I've shared in chats that I like that they have details of, what are some of the things you can do? Identify who your audience is, simplify, using pronouns instead of a lengthier language. And these are some resources that you now have for you. Thoughts, questions, considerations there? Sarah notes language not clear enough even to figure out what the sentence was trying to say. Right. Not false at all. Yeah, that was a pretty jargonish sentence. And I would definitely recommend rewriting something like that. We'll do a couple more of these exercises as we go along. This is something that folks have asked about. How do I write in plain language? And that's one of the ways we do it. Oh, I see somebody shared a note, like Google has a content style guide about inclusive site or inclusive development as well. We've tried to actually include some of those components in that UC Communications guide. There's also a content style guide under the hood there too that we've tried to make a little easier to cut through when written in plain language to help you, get more guidance in that space. And that would be in this section, which I think has been shared once or twice in chat already, but in the UCSC Communications editorial style guide. All right. Not seeing any other thoughts or questions. Let's move on. Wanted to talk quickly about your role in digital accessibility. This is a component of the required training that we talked about earlier today. And really, when we think about accessibility or when you're creating web content, who does this apply to? And essentially, if you are a person that is creating content, an admin and a website owner, an editor, a writer, if you're creating video, that might be something new that we haven't talked about entirely. Folks that are instructional designers, creating accessible content is really for anyone who creates info that gets published digitally. And the responsibilities in that space include writing and formatting page content that would include things like plain language. In general, these are bullet points. There's more to it, of course, but assigning headings to organizing content, that means not using just like fonts and bolds and components. You'd actually use headings to structure content. Sometimes we might call that semantic structuring of your HTML. But essentially creating a page structure so people who are sighted and people, sorry, not just sighted, but people who use assistive technology can also access and understand that same level of content. Adding alt text for images and photos. That's a key component in here. We want to make sure if there's a visual of something on the page that everybody has equal access to that. And then also, if we are creating video, providing captions and transcripts for videos that we put out. If we don't do that, and there's automated tools that do that aren't as very successful as generating captions and transcripts, but they can be used at the moment. But if we don't do that, we're again still creating an inaccessible or an exclusive experience for folks. And we'll go deeper into some of these topics, but I wanted to ask, does any of this surprise anyone, or does this feel out of the ordinary?
Nope.
Yeah. Good. Thanks for the notes. That's great. And I'll note that when we think about these things ahead of time, and we don't do them as an afterthought to creating content, we're actually designing for accessibility and we're designing for inclusivity. And that's a good thing. We talked about some of the pieces in Jim's presentation. There could be legal obligations. And while legal obligations are important to us, I think the cultural aspect of creating equity is more important. And that's what I usually like to talk about with when we create content for folks. We want to make sure that everybody gets the same access level to it. Are there legal obligations? Yes. Are universities getting sued because they don't create accessible content? Yeah, I'll definitely say that happens too. But I think if we go forth with the idea that we want a culture of inclusivity and accessibility, that's our best direction that we can take. All right, we'll keep moving here. Feature requests. So this is something that'll sure come, more and more, and we're going to try and do a monthly check-in at each of these meetings to say where feature requests are. This is the current status of feature requests. I would note there is a backlog of requests that are currently in development. We probably get, I don't know, between 3 and 5 new requests each week. Each of those requires a lot of thought and consideration. And I would just note that there's no new status updates for feature requests that have been coming in at the moment. But that is the current state of things. And I would want you to know that we are working in this space to make sure that we can deliver some of the functionality. Sometimes it sounds, easy enough, like, can't we just turn this thing on? And like, the answer might be yes, but then what? Then what happens? Who is it maintained? Who maintains it? Does it work with the ecosystem that we're developing in? There's lots of questions that happen in the background that we try to consider with each new feature request. Yeah, I got a note. Can we share the criteria for prioritizing requests and triaging them? Yeah, I would say in general, it's a volume of requests. If we get one request for a thing, we will put it in the queue. If we get multiple requests, we will move that up in a queue. That's actually happened for a component that's in development right now. We had a number of people say, if we can get the ability to add some type of filtering component to a page, whereas you could land on a page and be able to filter through it, that could move forward a lot of websites on campus that would transition from WCMS or their current state into the new WordPress platform. So that is something that we responded to, which meant that got prioritized up a little higher. Yeah, I mean, like, yes, if the demand is there, Becca, please let us know. That's how there's usually like a formula about how to determine priority, and volume of request is usually one of the components about how that will get in there. Like the impact to campus is something we also observe too. Like how many people will actually use this, or is this just a one-off solution for one website? Those are things that we all need to concern or think about, I should say, as we consider how to get those informations in. So if the requests are public to staff, we can vote for it. Sure. The best way for us to triage those things, I would say, is to make that request. And on that link that we shared of the current feature request support, there's a way to submit that request, and you could consider that a vote as well. Questions, thoughts?
What was that filtering thing that was requested? What does that mean? I don't understand.
Yeah, more to come along about that. And I don't want to promise that because that thing is in development, and development does not mean production. Development means we're considering the impact. What a filtering tool would do is on a page, you might be able to sort. Let's say you have a set or a number of things in a category. You could select, you could use a filter to only filter and look at a certain amount or a certain set of those components on a single page. You need to think.
Do you mean like blogs? Like basically you can categorize blogs and you can filter them on WordPress?
Yeah, blogs or post types in WordPress. Yeah.
And it's already available in WordPress.
To a certain extent. I think we're talking another level of functionality on that. Without going too deep into it, there's a way to display certain post types, but what if you have 100 of them and you only want to show 5 of them in a certain way? Or what if you have multiple programs within a division and you want to sort down to only programs that are about astrophysics? Like that's what a filter functionality, that's the component that we're working through right now.
I think
Great,
the
thank you.
distinction is something that is interactive. So in other words, the user would be filtering the content. If there's 200 items and they only want to see things that start with a letter B, they could do that, or things that have a certain category or something.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. Yes, right. And that's the thought, is very often we'll have a way that we want to show a lot of information to people on a web page, and we need some type of tool to slim that down. I mean, we just talked about the component of plain language, is people scan and they quickly look for things. And if it's too overwhelming, there's a good chance that they're going to miss that thing. And that's not what we want, especially when it comes to the, the level of like a program. What if people like scan the website and they don't see the program that they want to potentially participate in? That's risk. That's not a great situation. So with that, we'll move into like just general Q&A for folks. And we're pretty close to wrapping up here. Next, we're looking at March 21st-ish, around there. You'll get the invite. I will share in our chat the way to provide feedback for these meetings. And with that, we will just, I'll stop recording at this point and we'll open the table if there are questions or concerns that you want to talk about. And feel free to in chat or mic on if you choose. And this is also an okay space to head out for the day and start the rest of your Wednesday if you have no further questions.
Thank you for answering my questions.
You bet, Lauren. Great. I see one just came in. Is there somebody in charge for the architecture of a college website? Great question. So it kind of talks about our roles and responsibilities and who's responsible for what. The so the information architecture, let's break it down what that usually means. Sometimes people think of that as like a sitemap or all the pages or the structure of your website. Think of maybe the framework of your house. The information architecture is a similar component to your website, how your website is structured together. That is a decision that I think needs to be made locally with the owner of the website. ITS, we have guidance about how to get to that space, about how to create the best structure, but really those decisions, I don't think those should be made by central IT. That should be made by you as a unit. You own that content. You're the subject matter of that content. And I say you in a very general term. Maybe that's like the division, or maybe that's the group of people that would manage and maintain content on a website. That is something that we can absolutely guide you through and say, like, what is a good way to structure these things? And we've got advice about how to walk through that. There's actually on the website, which we shared a link to before, there's a getting started information toolkit that talks about information architecture that if somebody is quick with their fingers, if they wouldn't mind pulling up that web resource toolkit, we could share out to kind of like start exploring that space. But I would say the person in charge is the folks that own that website. They need to determine like what that is, I would say, is the best path forward. And if you need help or advice about how to do that, absolutely reach out. We have open labs. We have, these sessions probably aren't great for drilling down to an individual website question, but we can also help you think through that process with a consult if you like. Okay, scrolling through chat here. Sarah, let me know if sound comes back on. You can also type it in here, and maybe you did already. Oh, here we go. Is there a sign up list or something for accessibility trainings? Yeah, so the current accessibility trainings are, let's grab them up here. And maybe I'll just share it to walk through the space. You can find that. So again, websites.ucsc.edu. Please use it as a resource. It's there for you as somebody who creates content on websites. I'm going to share this in chat if you haven't already. And under our support tab, you can go to support. You can go straight to training too. And there are a couple spaces. This is the required training component that you would take. It's in a Canva course right now. There's also other factions of training, most of which I've switched to asynchronous. So they're essentially videos that you can cut through right now. There are some live ones still, but that is essentially the training. We've got more components about specific to accessibility training, if that's something you're interested in. And this is actually what we talked about here, is understanding that content contributor role to help folks really understand that space. Thank you, Brent, for posting the toolkit there. That's where you could go to find out more information about how to start thinking about information architecture, if that's a question for you. And if that gets too deep, please do reach out to us. Us being the web service, you can contact us through the website as well too. All right. Follow-up question. Does ITS have advice about how to change the culture of accessibility when it comes to producing online content, or start a conversation with their department? Folks in the department are cool with taking time to subtitle stuff, but there's been pressure for speed over accessibility. Yeah, I get that. And I think that's maybe at the crux of why we think about accessibility. I think I am here to certainly evangelize and say that like accessibility is a good thing. And what I would hope is you as a web content creator or a website owner or whatever your role is, that you also understand that that is an important piece, because, culture starts with us, right? We make decisions about how we're going to move forth with our work. And I would say there is back pressure on that, I think, and you're feeling like it's inhibiting any web work, we can have that conversation. I would note that the chancellor has shared with us that when we launch new websites, that inaccessible ones are not approved, and that's not okay. So that's a nice piece that the chancellor has given us to say that we can share back with folks. So there's some level of authority that's made a designation on that. As we talked about earlier, we have legal obligations. We are a public university that receives government funds. Therefore, we need to abide by Section 508. Which talks about, people who receive funds need to create equal and accessible resources for folks. So there's a couple different layers there that we could talk about. I don't know if that helps address your need, but what I would say is look, this is the right thing to do because this is how we are at UCSC. And is there a balance point that you need to get to? Sure. It's always some type of way to say we can get this far now, and maybe that's something that we could work on in the future. But what we don't want to do is ignore the idea of accessibility because it's kind of contrary to the whole idea of why we would publish content. You publish information out there because you want people to follow rules or understand information. And if we don't do that for everyone, we're creating a situation that is not equal. And in my opinion, that's not what we do in higher education. We do things for the many. So, yeah, outside of that, I think these are ideas that the Disability Resource Center talks about, the different units on campus that work in this space, that I would think they would all agree with that statement, that the more we can, create content for everyone, that's what culture change means. And it starts, not to be soapbox or anything, it starts with you. And, you can make a choice about how you want to approach this. And, I know it takes more time to design for accessibility. It takes more thought. It's easier just to slap stuff up on a web page, but if we do this the right way, we benefit from it. I think there's even research out there that says accessibility is good for business because you are opening up the pool of people that would actually consume your content. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's probably a good thing. I think that covers everybody's notes in chat.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions or thoughts? If not, I'll let you go. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for the conversation today. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.